Observer Thurix stood in the assignment chamber of the Galactic Council, his three-fingered hands clasped behind his back. The holographic display in front of him showed a single planet spinning slowly in the void. Outpost Gamma 7, a frontier world where humans and the Krell Collective were supposed to work together against pirate raiders. His job was simple: watch the humans fight and write a report about how good they were in combat. Thurix had been an observer for the Velian Dominion for over 60 cycles. He had watched thousands of species fight in thousands of battles. The Velians were one of the oldest races in the galaxy, and they kept detailed records of every species they encountered. Combat effectiveness ratings, threat assessments, tactical capabilities. The humans were new to the galactic community, barely 200 years into space travel. They were young, inexperienced, and from what Thurix had read in the briefing files, completely unremarkable. No natural armor like the Krell, no enhanced strength like the Borlak, no telepathic coordination like the Mindari, average height, average speed, average sensory capabilities. Their technology was functional, but nothing special. Their ships were solid, but not innovative. Everything about them screamed mediocre. This assignment would be routine. Document some basic combat maneuvers, file a report, recommend them for limited military cooperation, and move on to the next evaluation. The transport shuttle took Thurix to the human vessel waiting in orbit. The ship was called the Indomitable, a frigate-class vessel with visible wear on its hull plating. Thurix noted the scorch marks from previous engagements. Humans apparently didn't waste resources on cosmetic repairs. Practical, he thought. Perhaps overly so. The airlock cycled open and Thurix stepped into the human ship. The first thing he noticed was the temperature. It was warm, too warm for his comfort. Humans apparently preferred their environment at temperatures that would make most species uncomfortable. The second thing he noticed was the smell. Not unpleasant, but distinctly organic. Humans didn't sterilize their air to the degree most species did. A human male approached him. He wore a dark blue uniform with several strips of color on his chest. The insignia indicated command rank. "Observer Thurix," the human said, extending his hand. "I'm Captain Daywan. Welcome aboard the Indomitable." Thurix had studied human greeting customs. He reached out and grasped the captain's hand, noting the warmth and the firm pressure. Humans used physical contact as a greeting. How primitive. "Captain, thank you for accommodating my observation protocols." Daywan smiled. It was a strange expression, showing teeth. Thurix's research indicated this was meant to be friendly, though in most species, baring teeth was a threat display. "Happy to have you. We'll be departing for Outpost Gamma 7 in 2 hours. I've assigned quarters for you near the observation deck. You'll have full access to our sensor feeds and communication channels." "Most satisfactory," Thurix replied. "I have reviewed the mission parameters. A simple peacekeeping operation against pirate raiders. You will be working alongside Krell forces." "That's the plan," Daywan said. His tone was neutral, professional. "The Krell have been our allies for 3 months now. First joint operation should be straightforward." Thurix met several other members of the crew as Daywan gave him a brief tour of the ship. Lieutenant Hana ran the tactical station, her eyes constantly flicking between multiple displays. She acknowledged Thurix with a brief nod but didn't stop working. Specialist Taemin was elbow-deep in an engineering panel, adjusting something in the ship's power systems. He waved without looking up. Dr. Ji-Young, the chief medical officer, was more welcoming. She shook his hand gently and asked if he had any special medical needs during his stay. The humans were efficient and focused, but there was something else too. A casualness. They joked with each other. They laughed. Thurix had observed combat forces from dozens of species, and most maintained rigid discipline before operations. These humans seemed almost relaxed. Perhaps they didn't understand the seriousness of combat. Youth and inexperience often bred false confidence. 2 hours later, the Indomitable broke orbit and jumped to faster-than-light travel. Thurix settled into his observation station, reviewing his equipment. Cameras, sensors, communication recorders, everything functioning perfectly. He would document this operation thoroughly. The Council wanted data on human combat capabilities, and he would provide it. The journey to Outpost Gamma 7 took 3 days. During that time, Thurix observed the human crew. They maintained their equipment meticulously. They ran combat drills twice daily. They ate meals together in a common area, something most military forces didn't do. They watched entertainment programs during off hours. They exercised in a gymnasium, pushing their bodies through routines that looked painful. One human, a young female named Private Jiwan, ran on a machine for over an hour, her body covered in sweat. When Thrix asked why she was torturing herself, she laughed and said it helped her think. Captain Daewon spent most of his time on the bridge, but Thrix noticed he made time to speak with every crew member personally each day, not about duty or performance, but about their lives, their families, their concerns. It was inefficient leadership, Thrix thought. A commander should maintain professional distance. On the third day, they arrived at Outpost Gamma 7. The planet was small and rocky with minimal atmosphere. The outpost itself was a collection of prefabricated structures housing mining operations and a small population of various species. 200 human marines were stationed there as peacekeepers. The Krell had promised to send a fleet to help deal with pirates who had been raiding supply ships in the sector. Thrix was on the bridge when they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The view screen showed the planet ahead, and scattered around it were ships. Lots of ships. Lieutenant Hana's fingers flew across her console. "Captain, I'm reading over 50 Krell vessels. That's 10 times more than the briefing indicated." Daewon leaned forward in his chair. "Hail them. Ask for an explanation." There was a moment of silence. Then the communication panel lit up, but not with words, with weapons fire. The Indomitable shuddered as plasma bolts hammered into the shields. Alarms screamed across the bridge. "Evasive maneuvers," Daewon ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Hana, full tactical analysis. Taemin, reinforce forward shields." Thrix gripped his observation console as the ship twisted violently through space. Through the view screen, he watched more Krell ships emerge from behind the planet's moon. This wasn't a joint operation. This was an ambush. The Krell had betrayed them, and the humans were outnumbered 10-1. Thrix felt his internal organs twist with fear. This observation mission had just become a death sentence. He was going to die documenting humanity's first and final combat engagement with a superior force. The young, unremarkable species was about to be wiped out, and he would be wiped out with them. He activated his recording equipment with shaking fingers. At least he could send the data back to the Council before the end. At least his death would have meaning. On the bridge, Captain Daewon was issuing orders in that same calm voice, as if they weren't facing impossible odds. As if they weren't about to die. Thrix realized with a chill that the captain wasn't panicking because he didn't understand the situation. He was calm because he did understand it, and the humans weren't running. The Indomitable twisted through space like a wounded bird, but it was still flying. Thrix watched the tactical display with mounting horror as more Krell ships appeared on sensors. 50 vessels had become 60. 60 had become 75. Each one was larger than the human frigate. Each one carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Plasma bolts lit up the void around them in brilliant flashes of green and white. The ship's shields flickered with each impact, the energy displays dropping steadily. Lieutenant Hana's hands moved across her console faster than Thrix thought possible for organic fingers. She was tracking 17 separate threat vectors simultaneously, calculating firing solutions, adjusting shield frequencies to match incoming weapons. "Krell cruiser approaching port side," she called out. 3 destroyers starboard. "Fighters launching from the carrier group." "Acknowledged," Captain Daewon said. His voice hadn't changed. Still calm, still steady. "Taemin, can you give me more power to the engines?" From engineering, Specialist Taemin's voice came through the speakers. "Rerouting power from non-essential systems now. Life support going to minimum. You'll have 30% more thrust for 15 minutes, then we'll need to cool down or the engines will melt." 15 minutes is plenty, Daewon said. "Hana, target their shield generators. Railgun batteries, continuous fire." The ship shuddered as its main weapons discharged. Thrix had read about human railgun technology in the briefing files, primitive kinetic weapons that used magnetic acceleration to throw chunks of metal at incredible speeds, crude compared to directed energy weapons or plasma cannons, except the briefing files hadn't mentioned what happened when those chunks of metal hit something. The lead Krell cruiser's shields flared brilliant blue, held for exactly 2 seconds, then shattered like glass. The metal slugs punched through the hull plating and out the other side. Atmosphere vented in frozen clouds. The cruiser began to tumble, systems failing. Thrix stared. The Krell shields were military grade, designed to deflect energy weapons. But kinetic weapons didn't care about energy dispersion. They just hit. Hard. 2 more Krell ships died in the next 3 minutes. The Indomitable spun and weaved through their formation, and every time a ship got close enough, the railguns tore it apart. But there were too many. For every ship the humans destroyed, 3 more took its place. Captain taking heavy damage to port hull, Hana reported. Shields at 40% and falling. Noted, keep firing. Thrix activated his communication equipment.
He had to send his initial observations back to the Council while he still could.
His fingers trembled as he recorded. Human combat capabilities exceed initial assessments. Tactical innovation evident. However, numerical superiority of Krell forces will prove decisive. Estimate human vessel destruction within 10 minutes. The ship lurched violently to one side. Thrix's body slammed into the wall despite the internal gravity systems. Pain shot through his shoulder. Around him, the human crew barely reacted. They were strapped into their seats, bodies pressed back by forces that should have rendered them unconscious. That's when Thrix understood something the briefing files hadn't mentioned. Humans came from a heavy gravity world. Their bodies were built to withstand pressure that would kill most species. The maneuvers Captain Daywan was ordering would pull apart a Velian's internal organs. The humans just grimaced and kept working. Incoming transmission from the surface, the communication officer called out. It's Major Soman from the ground garrison. Put her through, Daywan ordered. A woman's face appeared on the view screen. She was young, with short dark hair and a smear of something dark across her cheek. Blood, Thrix realized. Behind her, Thrix could hear weapons fire and explosions. Captain, we're under assault. Krell ground forces came out of nowhere. Thousands of them. We're holding the main compound, but we've taken casualties. Daywan's jaw tightened. It was the first real emotion Thrix had seen him show. How many Marines do you have combat ready? Maybe 120. The rest are wounded or dead. More explosions in the background. Major Soman didn't flinch. Sir, we can hold for maybe an hour. Maybe less. They have armored walkers and air support. We need evacuation or reinforcement, Thrix calculated quickly. The Indomitable had 60 personnel aboard. Even if they all went to the surface, the humans would still be outnumbered 10-1. And without the ship in orbit, they would have no escape route. The logical decision was clear. Abandon the ground garrison and retreat. Save who you can. Prepare for drop pod insertion, Daywan said. We're coming down. Thrix's vocal cords seized. That wasn't just illogical. It was suicide. Captain, he managed to say, you cannot split your forces. You are already outnumbered in space. If you send personnel to the surface, you doom everyone. Daywan turned to look at him. The captain's eyes were hard. Observer Thrix, I appreciate your mathematical assessment. But we don't abandon our people. Ever. That is irrational. That's human. Daywan turned back to his crew. Hana, you have the bridge? Keep the Krell busy. Taman, prep drop pods for 40 personnel. Medical teams, combat teams, and heavy weapons. We leave in 5 minutes. The bridge erupted in activity. Crew members unstrapped from their stations and ran for the drop pod bay. Dr. Ji-Young rushed past Thrix carrying a medical kit that looked half her size. Private Ji-Won, who Thrix had watched exercising days ago, was suiting up in combat armor and checking her weapon. Captain Daywan approached Thrix. You're coming with us. Your observation protocols require direct documentation of ground combat, correct? Yes, but then you'll ride in my pod. Stay behind the Marines and document everything. That's what you're here for, right? Daywan's tone wasn't mocking. Just matter of fact, Thrix wanted to refuse. Wanted to demand to stay on the ship. But the captain was right. His mission required direct observation. And despite every logical instinct screaming at him to flee, Thrix found himself following the humans to the drop pod bay. The pods were small, cylindrical vehicles designed to punch through a planet's atmosphere and deliver troops to the surface. Thrix strapped himself into a seat next to Captain Daywan. Across from him, 3 human Marines checked their weapons. One of them, a young male named Corporal Minho, noticed Thrix staring. First combat drop? Minho asked. First combat anything, Thrix admitted. Minho grinned, teeth showing again. Don't worry. The worst part is the ride down. After that, it's just noise and chaos. Stick close to us and you'll be fine. How can you be so calm? Thrix asked. The odds of survival are terrible, yeah, Minho interrupted. But that's true every day. Could get hit by a transport shuttle. Could get sick. Could trip and crack my skull. Death's always around the corner. Might as well meet it doing something that matters. The pod bay door opened to vacuum. Through the portal, Thrix could see the planet below and the swarm of Krell ships above. "All pods, launch on my mark," Day-One said into his communicator. 3, 2, 1 mark, the pod launched. Thrix's stomach lurched as they accelerated away from the Indomitable. Through the small viewport, he watched the human ship twist and fire, surrounded by enemy vessels. Lieutenant Hana was outnumbered 60-1 now. She was going to die up there, but she was buying them time to reach the surface. The pod shuddered as it hit the atmosphere. Heat turned the viewport orange, then red. The noise was incredible, a roar that seemed to shake Thrix's bones. The humans sat in silence, eyes closed, breathing steadily, preparing themselves. The pod's retro rockets fired, and they slammed into the ground hard enough to make Thrix's vision go black for a moment. When his sight returned, the Marines were already moving. The hatch blew open and they poured out into a nightmare. The outpost was burning. Krell warriors, massive insectoid creatures standing 3 meters tall, swarmed over the defensive walls. Human Marines fired from behind barricades. Bodies lay scattered across the ground. The air smelled of smoke and something else, something chemical and wrong. Captain Day-One raised his weapon and fired. A Krell warrior's head exploded in green ichor. "Everyone on me." We pushed to the command center, and the humans ran forward, into the battle, into the chaos. Thrix stumbled after them, his recording equipment capturing everything, his mind screaming that this was insane. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't even defending, they were attacking. Thrix had never truly understood violence before. Oh, he had observed it, recorded it, written analytical reports about kinetic force and casualty rates. But understanding violence and experiencing it were entirely different things. The sound alone was overwhelming. Weapons fire cracked like thunder. Explosions shook the ground. Krell warriors chittered and screamed. Humans shouted orders and warnings. And underneath it all, a constant low rumble that Thrix realized was his own pulse pounding in his ears. He crouched behind a pile of rubble, his observation equipment recording everything while his body tried to fold in on itself. 20 meters away, a human Marine named Sergeant Yunji fired her rifle in controlled bursts. A Krell warrior charged her position, 3 meters tall, armored carapace gleaming, mandibles spread wide. She shot it in the face once, twice, 3 times. It kept coming. She shot it 4 more times before it finally collapsed. "Tough bastards," Yunji muttered, ejecting her spent magazine and slamming in a new one. She didn't sound afraid, just annoyed. Captain Day-One led his squad through the chaos with the same calm efficiency he'd shown on the ship. "Minho, left flank. Shiwan, get that heavy weapon up. Medical, we have wounded by the south barricade." Orders delivered in conversational tone while death flew through the air around him. Thrix watched Corporal Minho sprint across open ground, plasma bolts scorching the dirt around him. One bolt clipped his shoulder, burning through his armor. Minho stumbled, fell, rolled behind cover. Thrix was certain the human was dead or at least incapacitated, but Minho pushed himself up, switched his rifle to his other hand, and kept firing. The wound on his shoulder was ugly, the flesh burned and bleeding. Minho didn't seem to notice. That's when Thrix began to understand what made humans different. It wasn't their technology. It wasn't their tactics. It was something deeper, something broken in their survival instinct. They didn't know when to stop. The Krell warriors were biologically superior in every measurable way. Stronger, faster, better armored. They had been bred for war by their hive queens over thousands of generations. A single Krell warrior could tear a human apart with its bare claws. And there were thousands of them. But the humans just kept fighting. Private Jiwan set up a heavy machine gun on a pile of debris. Krell warrior saw her and charged. She fired. The weapon bucked in her hands, spitting out rounds so fast they seemed like a solid stream. Krell bodies piled up in front of her position. She ran out of ammunition. Instead of retreating, she pulled out her sidearm and kept shooting. A Krell got close enough to swipe at her. Its claw caught her leg, opening a gash from knee to ankle. She shot it in the eye, then used her knife to finish it. Then she limped back to her gun, reloaded, and resumed firing. Dr. Ji-young had set up a field hospital in a half-collapsed building. Thrix watched her work with fascination and horror. Human bodies came in broken and bleeding. She patched them, injected them with chemicals, gave them water, and sent them back out to fight. Some of them could barely walk. They went anyway. One Marine came in missing his left hand, just gone severed at the wrist. He was pale and shaking. Dr. Ji-young stopped the bleeding, gave him something for the pain, and bandaged the stump. You're done, she told him. Stay here. The Marine picked up a rifle with his remaining hand. I can still shoot, ma'am. You're in shock. You need rest. I'll rest when we win. He walked out. Dr. Ji-young watched him go with an expression Thrix couldn't identify. Sadness? Pride? Both? Major So-min coordinated the defense from the command center, her tactical display showing the battlefield. Red markers for human forces, green markers for Krell. There was a lot more green than red. She saw Captain Daewon and nodded grimly. Good to see you, sir. Though you probably should have stayed in orbit. Probably, Daewon agreed. Status? Bad. We're holding 3 defensive points, but we've been pushed back from the east wall. Ammunition is running low. Medical supplies critical. And the Krell just brought up chemical weapons. Chemical weapons? Thrix's voice cracked. That's forbidden under galactic law. Major So-min looked at him. Yeah, guess they don't care about laws anymore. On the tactical display, Thrix watched new markers appear. Krell deployment units moving forward with large cylindrical tanks. Gas weapons. Neurotoxins designed to shut down nervous systems. Against most species, they were instantly lethal. Against others, they caused paralysis. Either way, they were horrifically effective. Get masks on everyone, Daewon ordered. Seal all buildings. Move wounded to interior rooms. The humans scrambled to comply. Thrix was given a breathing mask designed for his physiology. Through the command center's window, he watched the Krell launch their attack. The canisters arced through the air and burst, releasing clouds of yellow-green gas that rolled across the battlefield like fog. It hit the human positions. Marines stumbled. Some fell. Thrix's internal organs clenched in sympathetic horror. This was it, the end. The neurotoxin would kill them all. But then something impossible happened. The humans got back up. They were suffering. Thrix could see them shaking, could see the blood running from their noses and ears. The toxin was affecting them, but it wasn't stopping them. They had encountered Earth's poisons before, Thrix realized. Their biology had evolved to resist toxins that would kill cleaner, more efficient species. They were built to survive in a toxic environment, and they were furious. Sergeant Yoonji's voice came over the radio. Her words were slurred but understandable. Major gas attack confirmed. We're still combat effective. Requesting permission to push forward. Denied, Major So-min said. Hold your positions. Ma'am, with respect, they just gassed us. They used banned weapons. We should respond. Major So-min looked at Captain Daewon. Something passed between them. An understanding. Then So-min keyed her radio to broadcast to all human forces. All units, this is Major So-min. The Krell have betrayed galactic law. They have betrayed our trust. They have used weapons of mass destruction against military and civilian targets. As of this moment, all restrictive rules of engagement are suspended. Show them why you don't anger a species that evolved by refusing to die. Her final words were cold and clear. No mercy. The human response was immediate and terrifying. They didn't just hold their positions. They attacked. Marines with blood streaming from their ears charged into Krell positions. Wounded humans who could barely stand picked up weapons and advanced. The chemical attack that should have ended the battle had the opposite effect. It made the humans angry, and angry humans, Thrix was learning, were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. He watched Private Ji-won, still bleeding from her leg wound, led a squad through a breach in the Krell lines. They fought with knives when their guns ran empty. They used rocks and pieces of debris. One Marine grabbed a dead Krell's claw and used it as a weapon. It was savage. It was brutal. It was effective. The Krell had numerical advantage. They had superior biology. They had better armor and better weapons. But they were fighting an enemy that refused to acknowledge it was beaten. Every meter of ground cost them dearly. Every position they took was contested until the last human either died or was physically incapable of lifting a weapon. Dr. Ji-young ran through the battlefield between positions, treating wounded under fire. Thrix followed her, documenting everything. She never hesitated. When plasma bolts hit near her, she ducked, finished her work, and moved to the next patient. She treated a Krell civilian who had been caught in the crossfire, working on them with the same care she gave human soldiers. Why are you helping them? Thrix asked. They're the enemy. Dr. Ji-young didn't look up from her work. They're wounded. That makes them my responsibility. It made no sense. The Krell had betrayed them, had tried to exterminate them, had used chemical weapons. And the humans were still treating injured Krell with care and dignity. They were savage in combat but compassionate in aftermath. It was a contradiction that Thrix couldn't resolve. The battle raged for 6 more hours. The Krell began to retreat. Not because they were losing, they still had numerical advantage, but because the cost was too high. Every human they killed took 3 or 4 Krell with them. Every position they captured came at a price that made the victory worthless. As the sun set over Outpost Gamma 7, the battlefield fell quiet. The Krell pulled back to regroup. The humans held their positions, bloody and exhausted, but still standing. Thrix sat in the command center, his observation equipment recording everything, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. This wasn't combat. This was something else entirely. Something primal and terrifying. Captain Daywan collapsed into a chair next to him. The captain's armor was scorched and dented. Blood covered his hands. "Still documenting, Observer?" "Yes," Thrix whispered. "Though I'm not sure anyone will believe my report." "Probably not," Daywan agreed. He closed his eyes. "But that's your job. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what happens when you back humans into a corner." "What does happen?" Daywan smiled without opening his eyes. "We bite back." The night brought no peace. Thrix stood on the command center balcony, watching the horizon glow with fires. In the darkness, he could see movement. The Krell were regrouping, preparing for another assault. Behind him, human Marines worked to reinforce their defenses. They moved slowly now, exhaustion finally catching up to them, but they kept moving. Always moving, Captain Daywan received a communication from orbit. Lieutenant Hana's face appeared on the display, and Thrix felt a shock of surprise. The tactical officer was still alive. The Indomitable was still intact. Damaged, certainly. Hana's face was covered in bruises and her uniform was torn, but she was smiling. "Captain, we've destroyed or disabled 32 Krell vessels," she reported, "but we're in bad shape. Engines at 40%, shields basically gone. Hull breaches on 3 decks. We can't take another major engagement. Get out of there," Daywan ordered. "Jump to the rally point and call for reinforcements." "Sir, if we leave, the Krell can bombard the surface without opposition." "I know. Do it anyway." "That's an order, Lieutenant." Hana hesitated. Then she nodded. "Understood." "Sir, reinforcements are 4 days away minimum." "Can you hold that long?" Daywan looked at Major Sumin. She pulled up casualty reports on her display, numbers that made Thrix's stomach turn. Out of 200 Marines, only 98 were still combat ready. Another 40 were wounded but mobile. The rest were either dead or too injured to fight. "We'll hold," Daywan said. "Yes, sir. Good luck." Hana's image vanished. Major Somin updated the tactical display. The Krell had pulled back 5 kilometers but were clearly preparing for a renewed assault. Sensors showed them bringing in heavy armor and artillery. Thrix did the calculations automatically. The humans had no heavy weapons left. No air support, limited ammunition, and now no orbital support. They couldn't win. It was mathematically impossible. "We need to discuss surrender," Thrix said quietly. Every human in the command center turned to look at him. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Say that again," Major Somin said. Her voice was very calm. "Very dangerous. Surrender," Thrix repeated. He pulled up his calculations on the display. "Look at the numbers. You have fewer than 140 combat-capable personnel. The Krell have over 3,000 warriors on the ground with more arriving. You have limited ammunition and no resupply. You have no orbital support. You cannot evacuate. The Krell will destroy you. If you surrender now, you might—" "We don't surrender," Corporal Minho interrupted. He was sitting on a medical bed, his shoulder wound bandaged. "Not an option." "It's the only logical option," Thrix insisted. "You fought bravely. No one questions your courage. But this is over. Accept it." Captain Daywan walked over to stand in front of Thrix. The captain's eyes were hard and cold. "Observer, I understand that in your culture surrender might be acceptable. Might even be expected when the odds are impossible. But we're human. We don't work that way. You'll all die. Maybe. Probably. But we'll die on our feet, fighting, making them pay for every meter of ground." Daywan turned to address the room. "Everyone listen up. The Krell are going to hit us again at dawn. They're going to throw everything they have at us. We're going to lose people. We might lose everyone. But we're going to make them remember this day. We're going to make them regret ever thinking humans were easy prey. Understand?" "Yes, sir." The response came from every human in the room. even the wounded, even those who could barely stand. Thrix couldn't comprehend it. They knew they were going to die. They understood the mathematics, and they were going to fight anyway. It was insane. It was irrational. It was terrifying, and it was absolutely human. The night passed in frantic preparation. Humans set traps, positioned their remaining weapons, redistributed ammunition. Dr. Ji-young prepared the medical bay for mass casualties. She worked with steady hands, organizing supplies, setting up triage areas. Thrix watched her face. She knew most of her patients tomorrow would die. But she prepared anyway. Private Ji-won found Thrix on the balcony before dawn. Her leg was bandaged and she walked with a limp. She sat down next to him without asking permission. For a while they watched the eastern sky begin to lighten. "You think we're crazy?" she said. "Not a question. I think you're brave," Thrix replied honestly. "But yes, also crazy. You could surrender. Some of you might survive." "Might," Ji-won repeated. "Krell don't have a good record with prisoners. And even if they let us live, what then? We go home knowing we gave up? Knowing we quit when things got hard?" She shook her head. "That's not who we are. Who are you then?" Ji-won thought about that. "We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, predators, wars with ourselves. We survived because our ancestors refused to quit, even when quitting made sense. That's in our bones now. Our DNA, we don't know how to give up." She smiled at him. "Maybe that makes us crazy. But it also makes us human." Dawn came. With it came the Krell. Sensors showed the entire army advancing, walkers, artillery, aerial units. Thousands of warriors. They came in a wave designed to overwhelm and destroy. The humans opened fire. Every weapon they had left. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. Krell artillery began hitting the defensive positions. Buildings collapsed. Humans died. But the survivors kept fighting. Thrix recorded it all from the command center. His hand shook so badly he could barely hold his equipment. Around him, humans called out orders, coordinated fire, directed their forces. Major Soman's voice never wavered, even as explosions shook the building. Then something changed. In orbit, sensors detected new arrivals. But they weren't reinforcements. They were more Krell ships, fresh vessels joining the fleet. And then Thrix watched something that would haunt him forever. The Krell fleet began charging weapons. Not ship weapons. Planetary bombardment weapons. They were going to sterilize the surface. Kill everyone, human, Krell, and civilian alike. Destroy all evidence of their betrayal. Captain Daewon saw it too. His face went pale. "They're going to bombard the planet." "That will kill their own forces," Thrix said. "They don't care. They want to erase the evidence. All of it." Daewon grabbed the communication console. "Hana, are you receiving this?" Lieutenant Hana's voice came through, distorted by distance and damage. "We see it, sir. We're 4 hours away. We can't get back in time." Thrix watched the orbital display. The Krell ships were targeting specific coordinates. Command center, the human defensive positions. The civilian shelters. They were going to kill everyone. Captain Daewon stood very still. Then he started giving orders. "All units fall back to the underground shelters. Move the wounded first. Civilians in deep cover." "We have maybe 10 minutes. Sir, what about you?" Major Soman asked. "Someone needs to coordinate the evacuation. Go, that's an order." Humans began running, carrying wounded, hurting civilians, moving with desperate speed. Thrix found himself being pulled along by Corporal Minho. "Come on, observer. Time to go underground." In orbit, the Krell ships fired. Beams of energy lanced down from the sky. The first hit obliterated the east wall. The second struck the main barracks. Thrix felt the heat even underground, felt the earth shake. Then he heard something impossible. Lieutenant Hana's voice over the radio.
"Captain, we're 20 minutes out."
"We're coming back." "Negative, Hana, you can't stop them. Save yourselves." "With respect, sir, shut up. We're coming back." Hana's voice was fierce. "Specialist Taman has a plan. It's insane. It'll probably kill us, but it might work." On the surface, Captain Daewon watched the sky, watched death rain down. Then he saw them. Escape pods. Dozens of them. Launched from the Indomitable. They weren't running away. They were coming back. Coming to help. The escape pods positioned themselves in low orbit directly in the path of the bombardment beams. Their shields, tiny things meant only to protect against atmospheric entry, flared and died, but they bought seconds. Precious seconds. The beams hit the pods instead of the surface, human shields protecting human lives, and then the Indomitable arrived, not running, accelerating. Specialist Tai Min had done something impossible with the damaged engines. The ship screamed through space, trailing fire and debris. Its reactor was glowing white-hot on sensors. Thyrix realized what they were doing. No, that's suicide. Captain Daewon understood too. His voice was barely a whisper. Hana, don't. Lieutenant Hana's response was calm, professional, the same tone she'd used every day. Sir, it's been an honor serving with you. Tell everyone we did our job, a pause, and tell them we went down fighting. The Indomitable hit the Krell flagship at full speed. The reactor detonated. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. 16 Krell ships died in that blast. The bombardment stopped. In the underground shelter, Thrix listened to the silence. The battle was still raging above, but the bombardment had stopped. The Indomitable was gone. Lieutenant Hana was gone. Specialist Timon was gone. All the crew who stayed aboard. Gone. They had sacrificed themselves to save people they would never meet. To protect a species that wasn't even their own. Around Thrix, humans were crying. But they were also standing up. Checking weapons. Preparing to return to the surface. The Krell had made a fatal mistake. They thought killing humans would break human spirit. Instead, it had unleashed something far more dangerous. Human rage. 1 week later, Thrix stood in the Galactic Council chambers. The wound in his shoulder had been treated but still ached. A reminder, he would carry that ache for the rest of his life, he suspected. Not just in his body but in his mind. The council chambers were vast, with seating for representatives from 100 species. Today they were all present. News of the Krell betrayal had spread across the galaxy. The chambers buzzed with anger and fear. Fear of what the Krell had done. Fear of what it meant. But more than anything, fear of what the humans had done in response. The council speaker, an elderly Mindari with silver skin, called for order. Observer Thrix of the Velian Dominion, you were present at Outpost Gamma 7. You witnessed the engagement between human forces and the Krell Collective. Please present your findings. Thrix approached the central podium. His legs still trembled when he walked. Post-traumatic stress, Dr. Ji-Young had told him. It would fade with time. Maybe. He activated his presentation display and took a breath. Honored council members, he began. You asked me to observe human combat capabilities and provide an assessment. I must inform you that I cannot complete this task as originally specified. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The speaker leaned forward. Explain. Because what I witnessed was not combat. It was a massacre. Thrix let that word hang in the air. But not the massacre the council might expect. The Krell outnumbered human forces 10-1 in space and 15-1 on the ground. They had superior biology, superior weapons, and complete tactical surprise. By every mathematical calculation, humanity should have been exterminated within hours. He activated the first recording. The chamber fell silent as the battle played out on the displays. The ambush, the space engagement, the Indomitable twisting through enemy fire, destroying ships that should have been untouchable. Thrix narrated in clinical terms, but his voice shook. Human weapons technology, while less advanced than Krell energy weapons, proved unexpectedly effective. Their kinetic weapons ignore shield frequencies designed for energy dispersion. Additionally, human tolerance for acceleration forces exceeds any previously recorded species. They performed maneuvers that would kill most council members through internal organ damage alone. The recording shifted to ground combat. Council members gasped and some looked away as Krell warriors tore into human positions. As humans fought back with savage determination, the Krell deployed chemical weapons in violation of galactic law. Thrix continued. His voice hardened. Neurotoxins that should have incapacitated all carbon-based life. The humans suffered, but they did not stop. Their evolutionary history on a world with natural toxins gave them resistance. Not immunity, resistance. They fought while bleeding from their ears and noses, while their nervous systems partially shut down. They fought anyway. He showed them Corporal Minho firing with a destroyed shoulder, Private Jiwan fighting on a ruined leg, Sergeant Yunji continuing to give orders with 3 broken ribs, Dr. Ji-Young performing surgery while the building collapsed around her. I watched humans fight past the point where any rational being would surrender or die, Thrix said. I watched them take casualties that would break any military force's morale and respond by attacking harder. When wounded, they continued fighting. When out of ammunition, they used blades. When blades broke, they used rocks. When they had no weapons left, they used their bodies. The council watched in horrified silence as the recordings showed the final bombardment. The escape pods positioning themselves as shields. The Indomitable's suicide run into the Krell flagship. Lieutenant Hana and Specialist Tae-min sacrificed their ship and themselves to stop the orbital bombardment, Thurix said quietly. They knew it would kill them. They did it anyway. To save people on the ground, human and non-human alike. He paused the recording, but perhaps most relevant to this council is what happened after. When the battle ended, the display showed Dr. Ji-young treating wounded Krell, showed human Marines providing water to Krell prisoners, showed Captain Daewon ordering his forces to render aid to enemy wounded before attending to their own less critical injuries. The Krell betrayed them, Thurix said, used forbidden weapons, attempted genocide, and when humans found Krell survivors, they provided medical care. They treated enemies with the same compassion they showed their own. I do not understand this. It contradicts every logical response to threat. But I witnessed it repeatedly. A Borlak counselor stood. His massive frame made the podium shake. Observer, are you saying humans are dangerous? Yes, but also compassionate. Yes, I know, Thurix said. And yet humans possess both simultaneously. They will fight with savage brutality when threatened, but they will not become monsters even when given every justification. Another counselor, a Velian like Thurix, spoke up. What are you recommending? Full military cooperation? Restricted partnership? Quarantine? Thurix pulled up his final assessment, the one he had worked on for 3 days, trying to find words that captured what he had learned. I recommend full military cooperation. With specific notations, he displayed the classification he had written. Species human, origin, Earth, heavy gravity death world, combat assessment extreme threat level, psychological profile refuses surrender, refuses defeat, will fight until physically incapable of continuing. Notable traits: enhanced resistance to toxins, radiation, and physical trauma. Extraordinary pain tolerance. Unprecedented determination. Strategic recommendation: never engage in hostile action against humanity. Secondary recommendation: if forced to engage, ensure overwhelming force sufficient to achieve complete incapacitation immediately, as wounded humans continue to present combat threat. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Arguments and counter-arguments flew back and forth. Some counselors called for military alliance. Others wanted restrictions. A few demanded humanity be expelled from the council entirely, declared too dangerous. The speaker called for order again. Observer Thurix, one final question. Do you believe humans are trustworthy as allies? Thurix thought about Captain Daewon refusing to abandon his people, about Private Ji-won leading charges on a wounded leg, about Dr. Ji-young treating enemy wounded, about Lieutenant Hana sacrificing herself to save strangers. Yes, he said firmly. Absolutely yes. Humans value loyalty above logic. They will die before abandoning allies. That makes them the best allies you could possibly have, or the worst enemies. The vote took 2 hours. In the end, it was unanimous. Humanity was approved for full military cooperation with the Galactic Council, but Thrix's classification was added to their official record. A warning and a promise. After the vote, Thurix returned to his quarters. He found a message waiting. From Captain Daewon. The captain was alive. Human reinforcements had arrived 4 days after the Indomitable's sacrifice. They found 92 humans still combat capable, still holding their positions, still refusing to surrender despite being surrounded and outnumbered. The message was simple. Observer Thurix, thank you for your report. I hope we gave you enough data for your assessment. Also, I wanted you to know that Private Ji-won asked about you. She wanted to make sure you made it home safely. We take care of our friends, even the ones who think we're crazy. Stay safe out there, and remember you're always welcome on a human ship. Thurix found himself smiling through tears he didn't know he was crying. He composed a response. Captain Daewon, thank you. Please tell Private Ji-won I am well. Tell all your crew I am well because of their sacrifice. I owe them my life. I owe humanity my life. That is a debt I can never repay. But I will tell your story. I will make sure the galaxy knows what you are capable of, both the violence and the compassion. You asked if I had enough data. I have more than enough. I witnessed what happens when you threaten a species that evolved by refusing to accept extinction. You showed me that strength is not just physical force, but the refusal to let fear or pain dictate your actions. Thank you for that lesson. And tell your crew something for me. They are the bravest beings I have ever encountered in 60 cycles of observation. It has been my honor to witness their courage. He sent the message and sat back. Outside his window, stars gleamed in the darkness. Somewhere out there, humans were preparing for their next mission, their next battle. They would face impossible odds. They would suffer terrible casualties, and they would never, ever quit. Thyrix added one final note to his personal log, not for the Council, just for himself. For history, I was sent to observe humans in combat. Instead, I witnessed what makes a species truly dangerous. Not their weapons, not their technology, but their absolute refusal to accept defeat. Humans don't fight because they can't conceive of losing. They fight because they refuse to accept it. And that refusal, that stubborn, irrational, beautiful refusal to give up, makes them the most terrifying and wonderful species in the galaxy. May we never have to face them as enemies, and may we always have them as friends. He looked at the assessment one more time, at the classification he had given humanity. Death world or extreme threat. Unprecedented determination. It all sounded so clinical, so cold it didn't capture the truth. Didn't capture the Marine who fought with a destroyed shoulder because his friends needed covering fire. Didn't capture the doctor who treated enemies with compassion.